As we begin, let's pray. Father, very simply we pray that through your Spirit we would all, every one of us, not only listen to your word, we would hear it and hear it from the heart and respond. Father, for the glory of Jesus, be with us in power. Amen. Lest we forget, a phrase that we readily associate with Remembrance Sunday. However, as you may know, originally it had nothing to do with Remembrance Sunday. It is a refrain from a poem titled Recessional by Rudyard Kipling that he wrote to commemorate Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. However, then following, as it was then known, the Great War, it became linked with remembering the sacrifices made in conflict. And of course, when we say that, when we use that expression, it means more than simply remember that these happened once upon a time. It is a call to be warned and to reflect by what we know has happened in the past. It is a call to remember yesterday so we live differently today, so that the sacrifice that was made impacts our lives and our world, lest we forget. Well, those words, lest we forget, are very apt for our Bible passage today. If you've been with us, you'll know we've been working through this book of Hebrews, and over, the author is calling us to remember past truths, truths that we learnt in the past, remember them today, and so be changed by them today. And that connects this message with all of us here this morning. We may know our Bible. At least we may think we know it well enough. We've got the gist of it. We may have picked that up growing up, being taken to church with mum and dad, or attending chapel as part of school. We might still be happy to go on high days and holidays. It's why we might be here or watching today, even though we wouldn't normally bother. It feels like the decent thing to do. And perhaps if we're younger, we may think, well, we don't do things that other people our age do. That's got to count for something. Or if we're older, we look back on our lives and we think, well, I've done a half-decent job of it, actually. Yeah, I haven't been perfect, but I've lived pretty decently. I made good, solid choices. I've looked after my kids. I've got grandchildren following along the way. I can look back and think that is a job well done. We may then think, at either end of the age spectrum, and anywhere in between, that should do it. When I meet God, if there's a God, that should do it, because I've been decent. I do the respectful things. I turn up smart on Remembrance Sunday. We might think that. And so this morning, right off the bat, I want to say clearly and firmly, that won't do it. It won't. Nowhere close. The message of the Bible, the message of Jesus, the message that we need to listen to and never forget is not try to be decent. It's not God helps those who help themselves. The message we need to hear and believe is that God saves those who cannot save themselves. The greatest rescue mission in history was not Operation Dynamo, the 1940 rescue of the British Expeditionary Force from the beaches of Dunkirk, spectacular though that was. The greatest rescue mission, as we will see, and one that you must be a part of, is the one mounted by Jesus for you to save you for all eternity. And this was written so that we would never forget that. In fact, so it would impact our lives daily, not one day a year. Now, of course, you may be here this morning and not in danger of forgetting that, because you can't forget what you've never known. And you may be new to all this. And if you are, you're so welcome. And it is our joy to explain it to you. We're so pleased you're here, but this is here for you too. And I know many, they lament the ignorance of the younger generation when it comes to history. And history certainly matters so that we don't repeat mistakes that were made and certain things never happen again. But worse still than all that would be to miss the point of who Jesus is. To think you know about him and get it wrong. or to just never get round to understanding him properly. So wherever you are at this morning, this passage is for you. So let's get stuck in 3 things that it teaches us. No matter how old or young you are, no matter the life that you have lived or the life you're still hoping to live, number 1, we need to listen, not just hear. Our first verse, therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands. Now, actually, before we can really get in, I need to make sure we're all clear on what it means by rest. Because it doesn't mean a nice sit down, a quiet Sunday, a retirement of golf and the grandkids, a pumpkin spice latte or anything like that. That's not what it's talking about when it says rest. What he's been talking about, if you read the bit before, is about the story of how God rescued his people from ancient Egypt. You'll know that one, the story of Moses. How God freed his people from slavery and took them out of Egypt through the Red Sea into the promised land. The perfect place, the place of milk and honey filled with blessing and knowing God. That promised land. That was rest. But he's pointing out to those very same people who are part of all that, who were there. They saw the Exodus. They saw God's power. They got right to the edge of the promised land, and then they stopped listening to God and turned back. And he's been saying, look at them, because they missed out on the promised land forever. God said to them, you will never enter my rest. My promised land, the place of total blessing. And that promised land back then that he's picturing, he's saying that points us to an eternal promised land. A land where we can enjoy perfect relationship with God and with one another. A place where everything good that we enjoy here, everything that thrills us, from the things around us, the beauty of this world, to the joys of relationship with those we love, to a right relationship with our Creator, all of those things are maxed out in that promised land. They are at their highest level. So as God enjoyed all the perfections of the world at the end of the first creation week, through Jesus we can enjoy a world like that again. That is real and total and maximal rest. That's what he's talking about. That's what he means when he uses that term. People kind of shorthand it to getting into heaven. It's so much more than that. But to use the common parlance, just so that everyone in the room gets it, he is talking about missing out on heaven. So with that keyed in, verse 1 again, therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. So he's saying, how would that happen? How would you not make it in at the end? For we also have had the good news proclaimed to us, just as they did, but the message they heard was of no value to them. No value. Nil. Because they did not share the faith of those who obeyed. Now we who have believed enter that rest, just as God has said. So I declared on oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. Have you picked it up? There's 2 groups of people here. There's people who enter rest and people who never will. And those are big realities. People who enter and people who never, ever will. And all of us listening are in one group or the other. You are in one of those groups this morning, whether you know it or not. And when we pass like those we remember today, either we will enter our rest eternally, or we will go to a place where there is no rest at all. And that is it. There is a binary eternal end to every human life, yours and mine too. And so what makes the difference? What means you go one way or the other when you pass through that exit door that lies at the end of every life? That moment when all else that you take into comfort in this morning is stripped away and lost. It's not whether you know the words to enough hymns. It's not if you were raised in church, or if you were born in what was once known as a Christian country, or you always showed honor to your parents, or any of those things. This is clear. The message they heard was of no value to them, because they did not share the faith of those who obeyed. Now we who have believed enter that rest. Those people who escaped Egypt, they heard it all, but they didn't meet it with faith. And the faith that would have been shown by pressing on and keeping going into the promised land. That's where we're being told that we need to go this morning. What we need is an all-the-way home faith. You were on that beach in Dunkirk. Getting onto a boat did not make you safe. Making it to shore on the far side and stepping out of that boat, that's what did it. And that's what we're being told this morning. We all need an all-the-way home faith. So if you realize that you've been messing about in the channel, maybe for years, or maybe it's dawning on you this morning that actually you're still on the beach because you never got in the boat, this is a call to action. It's not a call to try and be a better person. It is not a call to up your church attendance, start showing your face a bit more. It's nothing like that. This is a call to actual living faith in Jesus Christ, and nothing else will do it. And what is that faith? It's not having a faith of one kind or another, being a spiritual person. It's a defined faith in what Jesus has revealed about Jesus. And what is that? This is from the very start of this book where our author is opening up to us the things that really matter. This is from Hebrews chapter 1. In these last days, he, that's God, has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. It's a faith that Jesus is God and that he is the one, the only one who can purify us, clean us on the inside from everything wrong we've ever done, so that we are fit to enter God's rest, his perfect world. Otherwise, we don't belong there, do we? One thing that we would probably all be clear on is we're not perfect. And therefore, we don't belong in a perfect place. We would need transforming to belong there. You could not go in as you are, and Jesus is the one who does that. Jesus is the one who purifies us. And how does he do that? Through his cross. That's what he's talking about here when he says, after he had provided purification for sins. At the cross, Jesus can take everything that's wrong with you and give you everything that's right with him, and fit you for heaven. It is not what we do. It is about accepting from the heart what has been done for us. There's no other way. You and I can do nothing, absolutely zero, to clean ourselves on the inside. Jesus alone can do this for you. There is no one else. And what this tells us is if we believe that, we really believe that, we will keep pressing on home. It's not enough to go, of course I believe that. I remember it from Sunday school. I remember it from school. I remember it's what my parents told me and I listened. The kind of remembrance here is a remembrance that counts. Not just do I know this happened, but is it changing me and the way I live? That's what it means to listen, not just hear. So as God speaks this morning in this room through his word, are you listening? Looking around, I can tell everyone's hearing because I can see that none of you are asleep. But are you listening? If your hope that if there is a world to come and there is a place for you in it is secured by anything other than Jesus, you will not make it through. The question this morning is, are you at risk? Are you at risk of not making it across the channel? Either because you've never got in the boat or because you've got distracted en route or even worse, turned back. Now, don't just hear me this morning. Listen to God's word. This is serious business. Because God says, he's very clear of some people, they will never enter my rest because they never really listen to Jesus. We need to listen, not just hear. Second, we need to respond today. Verse 6. Therefore, since it remains for some to enter that rest, and since those who formerly had the good news proclaimed it to them did not go in because of their disobedience. There are people who hear this stuff, but they don't listen, and so they do not make it safe to shore. Verse 7, God again set a certain day, calling it today. This he did when a long time later he spoke through David, as in the passage that is already quoted, a passage from the Old Testament. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. So don't think, that's very interesting and I should probably get to it sometime. I think my mum's always been telling me this matters, and one day, when I've got more of life out the way, I'll listen to her. Or maybe it's my son has always told me about this, but it's just weird because my son seems to know more about life than I do, and that makes it very difficult for me to listen. And I'm just not there yet, and we go no further. Today is the day for action. Because we don't know if tomorrow is going to come. And this passage has been saying it is clear there is a day when for all of us it is too late for rescue. It is just too late, and it is eternally too late. If you were on that beach in 1940, how keen were you to get off it? And if you were halfway across the channel, how keen were you to make it all the way to shore? You wouldn't have stopped halfway across, would you? You wouldn't have stopped halfway across that day for a swim because it was the summer. You wouldn't have stopped halfway across because you were curious as to what the mackerel fishing in that part of the channel was like that day. And you certainly wouldn't have changed your mind and headed back. And this actually is no less urgent. It's no less urgent than it was for those men on that beach. And if that seems like an exaggeration to you this morning, then you haven't understood it yet. Continues in verse 10, for anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest. That's lifting our eyes to eternity, entering the perfections of God's rest. And when we do that, we rest from the labors, the struggles, the work, all the trials of this life. It's the same rest that God entered at the end of creation when work is done. It is the never-ending enjoyment of things with God. It's saying there's so much more to life than this world, than what you've seen to date. Whatever kind of life you've lived, you may look back and think overall, actually, you've had a really good life. You've got a lot to be thankful for. But there's so much more. There's so much more. There's an eternity at stake. Or I know for some of you, life will have been really hard. And it's been marked by disappointment, regret, and sorrow. This tells you that doesn't have to be where you check out. Those things, they don't have to sum you up. There is so much more, and Jesus can give it to you. And this says, don't be foolish. Our rule for this morning is giving us a picture that there were very much people who were in the orbit of these things. There were those people who left Egypt all those centuries ago. They looked like they were a part of it. They'd seen part of it. They'd been part of this community. But in the end, they missed it. And we are being warned this morning to go a different way. Make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. Make every effort. What he's saying there is be earnest about this. Make this number one. He's not telling them to, he's not changed tack and saying, oh, no, what you need to do is try harder to be good. He's saying be serious, be single-minded about getting your eyes on Jesus and him walking you home. Be clear that Jesus has done it all. And it doesn't matter that he's done it all if we don't meet that with our faith, if we haven't put our trust in him, if we haven't got in that boat. We need to respond, and if we're serious about this, we won't shelve it for another day. Now, you may have questions this morning, and you may have someone who's always told you that this is important and you've never really listened before. Talk to them today. Talk to God today. Today is the day to respond. Finally, very briefly, this reminds us that we will all be called to account. Those final verses, they're really well known actually because they describe the power of God's word. But it's not just a random statement that he shoved in because it was poetic and reminds us how important and powerful God's word is, how special the Bible is. We know that because it starts in verse 12. For it follows on. For the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give account. You can't opt out of that. You can't opt out of this. No one in this room, no one who's ever lived gets a pass on that. We can't just part this. One day God will call us to account, and not to set out to him out of our back pocket our list of charitable good deeds, our work with the PTA, our acts of giving, the fact that we never missed a poppy Sunday, we always wore one. He's not going to be looking for us confirming that we looked after our children or we were generous to our grandchildren or that we did well in our career or any of those things. And he's not interested in us having a list of things we never did that we could bring up and say, well, I'm not like him, I'm not like her, I never did that. No, none of that stuff. If we think that's what God is after, again, if that's what we'd planned to say, it only serves to prove we have not been listening already. The only question is, have I trusted Jesus? When all that is wrong with us is exposed before a pure and holy God who simply cannot be fooled. That's what this is saying. You cannot fool him. I won't fool him. You won't. How would we then make it into the kingdom of a pure and holy God? How would we enter his rest? Because Jesus has cleaned us from the inside out. And we came to him in faith that he might do that. That's how. Now, online this week, I found this picture. Got it there, Ben? I found that picture. And if we zoom in, you'll see that on every cross, it says, lest we forget. And in reading those words, we might rightly think of all those who've fallen in wars to secure freedom. But the fact that it's written on crosses should remind us of a far greater miracle of deliverance, a greater rescue, a greater freedom, a greater shore to land safe on, and a greater eternal peace. And that rescue comes, and it comes alone through Jesus and his cross. So as we finish, I know that I've done a ton of stuff wrong. I am not getting into heaven. I will not enter my rest because I have pastored a church and I've tried hard to be a decent husband and a good dad. That will make no difference at all. What will make the difference is resting in Jesus and knowing that he died to pay for every wrong thing that I have done and to give me his goodness. So the question this morning for all of us is, where are you with this? Where are you with this morning? Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts.